Hello, everybody, wherever you may be. My name is Larry. My call sign Kilo 7 Hotel November. Welcome to Ham Radio Live Show 34. Today we're going to talk about antenna tuners, probably one of the most misnamed products in all of ham radio. It really is, because it makes you think right away that it is a device that tunes an antenna, and that's not what it does at all. Last night, and I don't think it's rendered yet to YouTube. By the time you see this on replay, it will have the previous show, episode 34. Man, I got to just tell you, I had the time of my life. I got to make my first top band QSO. That means I was able to contact someone on 160 meters, which for people who would like to become ham operators, which is what this channel is designed for, to help you not be so intimidated by all of this and realize that you can get your license. You really can. Start with ARRL right there. They'll help you connect to a local ham radio club in your area, and they'll help you get started on getting your license. And from there, it's pure joy. It really is. Whether you want to use Morse code or digital modes I've talked about a lot, but I haven't really explained very much. It's essentially a way that you can use things like, remember radio teletype? Remember teletypes back in like the 70s and the 80s, the 60s? Remember you'd listen to like the newscast and you hear the of the teletype machine in the background of the newsrooms. Yeah, it still exists. It actually exists in ham radio, and they're electronically sent. You read them on your screens, or you read them through the assistance of what's called an RTTY reader, which is on a lot of even free software that you can hook your computer up to. It's pretty fantastic. Then there's other digital modes like FT8, which is designed by a man that is an absolute genius. No joke. I mean, this guy's pure genius. He developed a system that will transmit on 15-second intervals and then receive on 15-second intervals, just a very low watt signal. The problem is some people use it, and what they do is they transmit at levels they really shouldn't be so high at. But the point is that it'll take really low power transmit signals that you can't even hear. They're below the noise floor. So what we think of as static, like if you're new to ham radio, what you think of static, it's actually in the static. It's in there. But somehow the receiver on the other end is able to decode that, and then it will figure out your call sign, your location, send the other, send that sending station automatically a report back from where that station is, and basically establish a contact. It's really fascinating how it works. FT8, pretty cool. There's assigned frequencies for that. We'll go over it real quick. We talked briefly last night too about the band plan. We're going to go over stuff today here, including antenna tuners. We'll get there. Let me show you real quick the band plan in the US and how it's set up. We talked last night about the various band plans and how they're organized. And they're organized so that there'll be some order to the way ham radio works. So for those who are interested in getting their licenses, look at all these frequencies. Those are all the frequencies a ham radio operator can broadcast at right there. Now, if you're a technician, which is the lowest class in the United States, and that's not, I don't mean to say lowest class as being bad, it's the lowest level. There are 3 levels of license, okay? There's technician, the next one is general, the top one is called extra, essentially, okay? So, and there's old terminology for licenses from the way it used to be called. Like, for example, we no longer use the word novice. That's an old licensing term, but there are still people who are licensed as, quote, novices, unquote, because your license lasts for 10 years. And that's the reason why they exist. Same thing with the term advanced on this screen. If you look to the left, like if you look right there, okay, where it shows the key, it talks about right in this area here, it talks about amateur extra, and then advanced, general, technician, novice. Okay. So novice was the lowest level license. Now it's known as technician. The general is next. That's still the same. Used to be advanced. Now it's called ammeter extra. That's what the E stands for on the various bands that you see. Now, for folks that have a technician license and are nervous about, moving up to general, please just get that general. You can do it. Ham radio clubs are out there to help you. They really are. And they'll do everything they can to help you get that general license. Just take a look at this chart. When you have a technician privilege, as you can see here, your privileges are pretty limited. I mean, you can do a lot of things from 10 meters up, technically. All right. Keep in mind, the technician has some privileges for Morse code. Okay. So you can do Morse code, for example, on 80 meters between 3.25 megahertz and 3.525. Glasses couldn't quite see that, sorry, and 3.6. So you've got about, a little room to play with, 75 hertz to play with there, or 75 kilohertz, to play with there. So you've got some room to play with for Morse code practice. Then you get to 40 meters, and, you can go from basically 7.025 megahertz up to 7.12, excuse me, I'm sorry, up to right about 7.075. So you get, you know, half a, you get 50 kilohertz. And then you've got a little more room there from about 7100 to 7125. So see, what I'm saying is just the amount of privileges you have are limited. If you want to use a microphone, you can't use it till 10 meters. Okay. And even at 10 meters, you really only get between 28.3 megahertz up to 28.5. And then you can use all of 6 meters, all of 2. So the FM bands, and then, of course, you can get into the, microwave bands and, the high end. But the point is, once you get your technician from technician to general, once you get your general, the world opens up. You can just see it on this screen. Once you get to general, about a little over 95% of all the frequencies available to you, you can use. And that's pretty cool when you think about it. Okay. You can use so many frequencies now just by advancing up from technician to general. So contact your local ham radio club or ARRL for some help. The American Radio Relay League exists to help people plug themselves into ham radio. It's a really good resource. It really is. So last night when we were on 160, that's 1.8 megahertz. For me, it meant the world because I've always wanted to get a call there. That to me is pretty stinking cool. I love that. Now I would love to try 220 and 630. I think it'd be kind of cool just to try. Yeah, why not? That's something new. But 160, that was always right there in the bucket list. And last night, thanks to two guys in California, that happened. All right, we're going to talk about some antenna tuners today. The one that I used, and that call, by the way, would not have worked if it wasn't for the MFJ 998. Now, I own this tuner, and I love this tuner, okay? Just so you know, when I purchased my Yaesu 101 MP, I sold nearly everything I had to do that. And it took 2 government stimulus checks from the coronavirus for me to purchase it. I'm on disability income, so for me, it doesn't come easy. Money is hard to come by. Buying expensive things doesn't happen to me. I'll put it that way. So I let go of a amplifier, an extra set of tubes for the amplifier, a radio, plus the 2 stimulus checks to buy the rig. But I didn't let go of my tuner. This was the one thing I had left besides a power supply. And I don't even need a power supply for the 101 MP, but I wanted it in case I ever got another rig. So what I love about this tuner is how quickly it tunes. Okay. It will show you Many things on the LCD screens show you your forward power out. It'll show you your reflected power back. It'll show you, of course, your frequency, and it'll show you the most important thing, which is your SWR, or for people who are studying to become ham operators, that's called standing wave ratio. There's a reason for that. Let me explain. Standing wave ratio is really simple for you to remember. There is an amount of energy that goes between your radio transmitter and your antenna. All right. The amount of energy that comes out of your transmitter up your feed line, because that's part of the system, and to your antenna, we just naturally figure the radio just puts it all out. But that's not how it works. Standing wave ratio essentially means the amount of energy that can go out onto that antenna and radiate out to the world, okay, versus the amount of energy that's reflected back because of resistance, comes back down the feed line towards your radio. Now, there's a certain level you want to be careful for in radios, because if you get that SWR, or standing wave ratio, meaning the return power coming back up the line towards your expensive radio, it can destroy your transmitter finals. Yeah. So your transmitter finals can be completely destroyed. And of course, that's the last thing you want. Otherwise, you've got a shortwave receiver now. Okay. So standing wave ratio is a very big deal. And what's really cool about the MFJ 998 is, first of all, it's a legal limit tuner. That means 1500 watts in the United States. We can go up to 1500 watts, which might not seem like very much, but truly 1500 watts will go a very long ways, like more than halfway around the world in good conditions. Even with the sunspot cycle as bad as it is right now, 1500 watts is a booming signal. It really is. So, and we'll get into that in another episode. I don't want to go too deep to confuse people who are trying to be ham operators, okay? An antenna tuner doesn't tune the antenna. It doesn't make the antenna work better. What it does is it makes the radio work better. So it uses a combination of inductance and capacitance, okay? Those two elements to help find a match between resistance and capacitance that will be low enough for your radio to transmit safely with. That's really what it does. And then the amount coming back down the feed line, if it's a significant amount of power, the tuner is designed to absorb that energy so it doesn't go into your radio and blow it up. That's essentially it. Okay, so explained simply, that's it. So you can use an antenna with this, and there's kind of an old joke I've heard people talk about with this tuner, as well as I think it's the 969 as well, that it will tune like a hanger, a clothes hanger. It really will. And it probably does. I'm not kidding. That's no joke. The antenna tuner has a way, it has over 20,000 memories in it. So if you've been to a frequency before or nearby, it's going to auto tune it like that. Okay. But if you've not been there with this certain antenna, it'll know which antenna it is. It knows if it's been on this antenna before, it will store the memory. And it's also a non-volatile memory, which means a volatile memory is something that if you unplug it, it forgets everything. Okay. So think of an electric device that, like your clock radio, right? If it doesn't have a battery backup, you unplug it and then you plug it back in. You could plug it back in a second later and it blinks 12 o'clock, right? Okay. That's volatile memory. All right. Non-volatile memory means it will retain the memory of what it has. And one of the neat things about this tuner is it has that. It has over 20,000 of those that it doesn't forget until you reset it. Pretty cool. So if you ever go to sell one or you ever buy one used, make sure you reset it. You reset all the memories. That's the first thing. That's a real good piece of advice I can give you. Okay. So what this antenna tuner essentially will do is you'll hear a lot of clicking, and it's it's very quick, very rapid. What it's trying to do is find the match that's close enough, the best it can get, so that your radio will be happy. It's not tuning the antenna. It's making your radio happy so that it'll transmit. And then if the watts coming back down that feed line are real strong, it's going to also absorb all that energy so it doesn't ruin your radio. So it really has a lot of different purposes. So when we talk about SWR, that's it. Now, last night's QSO, which means contact for Newham people, last night's contact or QSO was made on an antenna that is way too short to work on 1.9 megahertz, way too short for 160 meters. It's way too short. It should be over 215 feet long. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how long of a piece of wire you need. Essentially, the wire is the antenna. So you need about 215 feet or so of copper wire, hopefully, to use to radiate with. That'll work. What I had was 93 feet. And what the MFJ 998 did was it found a match on two different antennas. First, on the AV680 high gain vertical, which is designed to go all the way up to 80 meters, not 160, but it will go up to 80. You use an antenna tuner, it'll give you the opportunity to help to make that SWR happy on the radio, meaning it's going to be below 3 to 1. The meaning of 3 to 1 is 3 parts out. It'll accept a mismatch of essentially 3 coming back, okay, to 1. Anything more than 3 units coming back to 1 unit out, it's not going to accept it. It's going to blow up your finals or just simply won't tune it. The MFJ 998 will do that. That's one thing it does in spades. It also does really good in terms of the ability excuse me, the ability to show you, the ability to work up to full legal limit, so 1500 watts. It's an auto tuner. You don't have to turn anything or adjust anything. You can tweak with it a little bit to try and find a little more power out, okay? So like last night's QSO with the guys on 160 meters on an antenna that is not supposed to work 160 meters, worked because this tuner right here was able to find a suitable match to get enough forward power out of the radio when it transmitted that the guys in Northern California could hear it. That's how it worked on an antenna that's not designed to use 160 meters. Okay. So again, antenna tuners aren't there to tune your antenna. They're there to help make your radio happy with what it sees back on SWR or the power coming back down your feed line. That contact would never, ever have been made without that tuner. There's no way. So it's a ZS6BKW dipole, which is already a shortened G5RV for new hams. That's a basic dipole antenna, and it's a great one. You can use it all the way from 80 meters to 6. It's a great, great antenna. The ZS6BKW, you give up 80 meters, but you get 40, and it's so well done. It's really designed more around 20 meters, but it's a great antenna. That's the antenna it used to transmit. And my forward power last night was using 20 watts of power to tune. I was only getting out 13.8 watts out of the 20. So I had quite a bit of power coming back. Then the antenna tuner was able to even make that work at 200 watts and send out just enough of a signal to let those folks in Northern California hear it. That's the beauty of antenna tuners. If you have an antenna that may be resonant for most of it, and resonant for new hams means that it's perfectly tuned for a frequency band. It's a monoband antenna. So let's say, for example, we'll go to the rig cam real quick. We are on 20 meters. Okay. So let's say on 20 meters here, you have an antenna and it's really set up to work on just 20 meters. What you'd want to do is have that antenna set up so that your SWR curve because no antenna is perfect. It won't be perfect. A perfect SWR is 1 to 1, meaning 1 unit out of the transmitter, 1 unit going out. Okay. When you're mismatched 3 to 1, it's 1 unit going out, 3 units coming back. Not a good thing. Okay. So, or excuse me, it should be, sorry, 3 units going out to make 1 unit essentially. It's really a very confusing thing. So, again, I don't want to get people confused with mathematics because that'll get you so freaked out about taking your test, you'll think it's impossible. I don't want you thinking that. I want you to know you can pass your license. I do. So, keep in mind, inductance and capacitance are two things you need to know on your license. And if you have a technician license and you're moving up to general, those two items are important and they'll probably be on your test. Okay? Just remember that. Antenna tuners like this are designed to help you to tune up an antenna, or not really tune up, but to make a radio happy using an antenna that's not long enough to make a call work. That's really what they're about. Okay. So let's take a look real quick. And I want to make this as short as I can. We'll make a call or two hopefully today. And the basic issue here has to do with when we're talking about reactance. Okay. Reactance is power that's stored in the near field of an antenna. Okay. So the antenna kind of has this a reactance coming into it, right? And it stores it. It's combined with real resistance because keep in mind, atmosphere and noise and all that will fight against signals coming out of your transmit antenna. It's just the way things work. We don't have a perfect world. If it was a vacuum, if we lived in a vacuum, right, and there was no atmosphere and there was no, neon lights and no power sources and no power stations, it'd be perfect. We could just work all over the place. No problem. But real resistance gives us a problem. Okay, so now we get to impedance and we get to capacitance. Capacitance in an antenna, when we're talking about, an HF antenna, it's the ability of an object to simply store an electric charge. So think of a frequency, a signal. Let's think of an electric charge as a signal, right? Signal comes in and the antenna grabs it. It has the signal, okay? But there's a certain amount of resistance involved as well. That's where we run into an issue sometimes with not having a long enough wire to pick up a transmission. So, because the way that antenna theory works, when you get into bands like 1.8 megahertz, you need more copper, more wire. When you get to 2 meters, okay, so way on 160 meters. Let me get this graphic up. This is why we're showing it. When you use all the way, if you take a look on this chart at 160 meters, okay, you'll see it's 1.8 megahertz. That requires a lot of copper, a lot of wire out there, or height in an antenna to make successful contacts with. It's just the way it works. But when you go all the way to 2 meters, now you're at 144 megahertz. Now we went from 1.8 megahertz to 144 megahertz. And the antenna to use this really to make it work effectively can be like 3 feet long. It's that simple. Okay. So the lower in megahertz you go, the more wire you need, or the more antenna mass you need for capacitance. All right. An antenna tuner, when you use it, will help you to make your radio happy with not having enough wire out there or not having enough of a tall enough antenna, enough aluminum out there. Make it happy enough to still send a transmit signal out. Because SWR has everything to do with transmit and nothing to do with receive. Keep that in mind. Standing wave ratio is just the amount of energy that's stored in your feed line and your antenna that comes back to your shack, not the other way around. Standing waves, it's on the equipment. And when I say not coming back or going out, I mean It's standing. It's between your transmitter and your tower, okay, including your coax feed line. That's it. Without that tuner right there, that 160-meter call would never have been made. And by the way, I was on with them until 3 this morning, having a great conversation. We talked about the wildfires both in California and Oregon. We talked about a lot of stuff. That was so much fun for me to work 160 first time ever. Thanks to the MFJ 998. I could not be happier. I really couldn't be. All right, take a look at the rig cam. We are on 20 meters today. And here's a really good example. I'm going to show you I'm going to show you this in action because I've tuned to a point where my vertical has a hard time tuning to a 3-to-1 or lower match. Okay. Where this antenna tenor is needed. That's where I'm at. So I'm on the ZS6 BKW dipole. And if you take a look carefully, okay, I'm going to press the tuner button. You're going to see right here. I want to do this for new hams to explain how rigs work. This is really important for you to understand. You're going to see right here, this is actually where we're located on the band right now. This is at 14.237 megahertz. So I'm going to hit what's called the tune button on my radio and hold it in. It's going to send a 5-watt carrier automatically on this frequency to tune the antenna inside to match to tune the transmitter here for best SWR to that antenna. Now, usually it means it needs, by factory standards, it needs to be 3-to-1. 3-to-1 on typical rigs today. There are some older Orion rigs that'll do more than 10-to-1. There's some Elecraft rigs that'll do that too, by the way. But on typical Yaesu and ICOM and Kenwood, it's 3-to-1. Okay? So here's the rig cam. But if I switch over, watch. Okay, now I'm on the high gain AV680 vertical antenna. All right. And if I press the tune button, watch what happens. See? What that means is the SWR is too high for the internal tuner of this radio to work with on this frequency. So I'm going to move. I don't want to do this while we're watching it because I don't want people getting seasick. You know, I don't want to do that. All right. So let me show you real quick the tuner itself so you can get an idea of how it works and, well, how we do it too. So for new hams or people that want to know how it works and why antenna tuners are important, here's a good example. All right. So here we are. We're at that same 14.237. We've already proven that. I know I've got the screen protector on it. I just like to keep it that way. Sorry. I don't get new stuff this expensive. I take care of it. It's covered in a pillowcase, for goodness sakes. All right. So again, it won't tune. Okay. It will not tune. So what we do, we move down and we have to emit what's called a carrier. Okay. And not a voice. It has to be like a Morse code tone. All right. And we can emit that by simply pressing the microphone button down. And as long as the radio is on CW mode, and it doesn't matter if it's on CW lower or upper, it's still going to emit a tone. All right. So here's the tuner. This is the same tuner. This is the MFJ 998. Okay. And I'm trying to move away a little bit. I'll just focus on the LCD because the LED light is brilliant on this. It's a really good lamp. Okay. But here we are. It already knows where we're at on the dial. I mean, excuse me, on the frequency band. I'm going to emit the tone. You're going to hear it start to click inside. That's the relays moving the LC circuit inside. Now here we go. And you'll see the SWR at the top, which will be here. You're also going to see down below how much forward power is going out at 20 watts and how much is coming back. Okay. Let's find out. That fast. Okay. That's how fast it tuned. Again, it matches the frequency right on the screen. It knows right away we're at 14.238, and it's telling us that right now it has matched a 1-to-1, which is technically a perfect SWR. Even though it's not perfect, it's making the radio believe it is. and we're getting 15.7 watts out of the 20 watts we just put in. Now, there's ways you can kind of play with it a little bit. For example, you can move the capacitor up a little bit, just kind of bounce it up a little bit. Now click again, see where we're at. See, now we're at 15.7 watts out. Maybe we want to move the inductor, okay? So we're going to press the L up button manually, okay? And we'll press it again, see how we do. Now we're at 15.7 out with a 1.1, so 1-to-1 SWR that the radio believes that we have. That's how it works, okay? So, great tuner. I kept this out of everything I had. It was the one thing besides the power supply that I held on to. I didn't want to lose this tuner. This tuner has worked brilliantly for me for everything I've ever needed it for, and it has just produced. It really has. I've been very grateful for it. Let's go to the rig cam. We'll see if we can make a very quick QSO call because we're already in this 30 minutes. Hang on. Now, first thing, we got to move it into SSB. Make sure we're into upper, and we are, which is good. Turn up our output power to, we'll move up to 200 watts. Why not? Okay. And of course, you can see the RFI by the neighbor's pump. Find a signal. Now, we've just moved frequency, and this is very important for new hams to understand. We've changed frequency now from where we were before. Remember, we were at 14.238 megahertz. Now, if you look at the rig cam, we're all the way to 14.340. That may not seem like very much, right? We've only moved up basically, well, 100 kilohertz. But it is a big difference to the antenna and how the radio works with it. Now let's see if the autotuner works, because there is an anomaly within this antenna system I have. Could be in my feed line too. So let's take a quick look, see if it'll auto-tune this frequency. And it does. See? So it's just one of those weird things. It happens, but it works. So that means that the radio is happy with seeing once you press that tune button that it will go, and you hold it in for a second and it automatically sees, okay, I can make this tune 3-to-1 or less. Okay. So when we look at, we'll pull this back just a second, because one of the cool things about the 998 is it'll show you, even when you're using an auto tuner, how much your SWR is, which is pretty cool. Okay. So there you go. 1.2. So even though the other one said 1.1-to-1, we're putting out, even at 1.2-to-1, we're going to be putting out a better SWR overall. We're just going to be putting out more power because we're using the internal rig. Now, what if we wanted to use the antenna tuner anyway? Okay. What if we wanted to do that? We still can do that. Let's take a look and see what it would do. Again, we're at 14,340. We'll give it a shot. We'll see how much of that 20 watts comes out. Again, remember, we started with 20 watts. That's what we tune at. The recommended output power when you tune on the MFJ 998 is that you use between 10 and 30 watts. I like to use 20, keep it as a reference, and always, try and tune so I know how much reflected power I have back. So we'll now use just this tuner to tune, and we'll see what it does. We'll see. You should see more power than 15.7 watts coming out. Oop, hold on. Got a little problem here. Sorry, guys. It always helps if you go into CW mode. Sorry. Here we go. See. And now, instead of 15.7 watts, we're right about 17 watts out. And that makes a difference. Remember, we started with 20 watts. So before, at 20 watts, we were getting 15.7 out. Now we're like at 17, 16, 8, 17. Yeah, pretty strong. So that's when you know the rig, if the rig will tune it, you're going to get more forward powered out. It's just the way it works. But the antenna tuner will still get you enough power out oftentimes to make that call. Okay. We are already into this video, 34 minutes, almost 35. I think this one we're just going to call it a wrap, okay? Because this was all about really showing you a little bit more about not only how we were able to make the call last night on 160 meters on an antenna that is not tuned whatsoever to be resonant on 160 meters, but the magic that did it. It was the MFJ 998. It made enough of a match that the radio was happy and there was just enough watts going out, forward power, we call it, so the gentleman in California could hear us. And we talked for 2 hours after that. So MFJ 998, highly recommend it. It's a great tuner. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. This was Ham Radio Live Show 34 from the Shack of Kilo 7 Hotel November. God bless you. 73, everybody. Until next time. Bye, everybody.